Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Alex from The Climb. Are you brand new to best ball but feeling overwhelmed by the amount of content that's out there? Do you want to be like me and have a shot to turn $5 into 100,000? We've started a new best ball tips in 10 series where we're going to be talking through some of the best ball basics to help you get up to speed before entering drafts this summer. This is another episode of The Climb. EJ, how you doing?
Doing very well. I'm, like I said, hydrated, healthy, and we need our sponsorship to fully come through here.
There we go. At Pedialyte, come through with
yes, at the Climb FF, please. DMs are open.
We're big fans.
I have spent enough money to fully fund.
There we go.
At least a sponsorship for the next month.
Yeah. But yeah, so first tips in 10 video, pretty excited to start this series because I know that we can get pretty deep into the weeds, and sometimes, it's good to take a step back and make sure that anybody who's, watching us has a good foundation as to what we're talking about. Yeah. So for this first one, sounds really basic, but I pretty much pounded the table and said, EJ, we have to do this for the first one, is understanding the rules and the contest format or structure. Because I think that is a really big part of the strategy. And, we've seen best ball exploding in popularity over the last 2 or 3 years. So there's much more selection in terms of what you can play, and, understanding what you're getting yourself into makes a really big difference as to how you approach it.
Absolutely. And even just for ourselves, we've been expanding our horizons a little bit. We've been pretty strictly underdog drafters, and I did a couple DraftKings drafts today just to change it up, see what's different, and get a little bit of change, refreshing my brain even on these tips in general. So,
yeah. And so you mentioned, there are a couple different sites that you can play best ball on. Obviously, we primarily cover Underdog here. Part of that is just because it's what we're most comfortable and experienced with, but Underdog is one, DraftKings is another, and then there's also Drafters. And so the first key difference between these sites is how the playoffs are handled. Underdog and DraftKings both have playoff weeks, which are weeks 15 through 17, whereas Drafters is just total points through the season, weeks 1 through 17, and whoever's got the most wins. So that's the first thing to understand. And then obviously, is it half PPR versus PPR? How many wide receivers do you start? Obviously, that can vary from site to site as well.
Even contest to contest too, sometimes depending.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so first thing, obviously, you want to do when you look at any of these, read the rules. It seems so silly and simple, but it's just something to check and make sure that nothing crazy's happened. I know Erwin has always done a really good job of every time a new tournament comes out, he touches on what the playoff structure is very, very well, and just what the advancements rates are, so on and so forth. So,
yeah, definitely, because I've said it makes such a big difference. But for these playoff week formats, basically you want to have an understanding of how hard is it to advance in the playoffs. And so the example that I pulled, obviously right now, Best Ball Mania is open on Underdog. So you have to finish 2 out of 12 in the regular season to move on. That's pretty basic across every contest. But then for Best Ball Mania in the playoffs, you have to finish 1st out of 18 in week 15, 1st out of 18 in week 16, and then the finals is over 400 teams. Compare that to another contest that's open right now on Underdog, the Dalmatian. 4 out of 12 teams make it out of the regular season, and then during the playoffs, it's 3 out of 8 advance, 2 out of 8 advance, and then it's a 100-person final. So, depending on which of those contests you're playing, you have to draft a little bit more aggressively or maybe a little bit more safely to give yourself a better chance of maximizing the return on your money.
And with that being said, too, typically something like the Dalmatian has a higher entry fee. And it seems like the correlation with the higher entry fees has a lot softer of a playoff advancement rate. Also because there's less entries, which gives you the better odds of, you invest more to win more, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think ultimately it boils down to, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage when these tiny little edges matter in these contests as to how you approach it. So if you're not understanding the rules, you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball, because I guarantee you there are other people in the field who do have a firm grasp of the contest structure and how to adjust for it.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good example of someone like me last year when at the start of the year. It's incredible how much better my teams looked at the end of the year compared to the beginning of the year when I started my drafts, because I truthfully didn't care. I was drafting it like I was drafting redraft, essentially, and I was wondering why some of these players that didn't seem so good were going so high at that point. And I probably made reaches I shouldn't, and basically just donated to the prize fund.
Yeah. And I think that's important to think about too, like before you start playing best ball, is what do you actually want to get out of it? I mean, do you just want to have some teams to sweat during the season? Like in that case, go get your guys. But, do you just want to be profitable, or are you willing to go into this probably losing money, but having the chance at a massive, massive payday? I mean, where you fall in that spectrum can also impact your draft strategy.
Very much. Very, very much.
So before we get out of here, I guess, another thing that I wanted to touch on with this as well is just bankroll management. I think that's really important. Obviously we want to advocate for responsible gaming. I think these are somewhat different than sports betting in a way that, when you finish, you can pretty much always tell yourself a story to make your lineups look good. Mm-hmm. So you may feel like you're doing really, really well when obviously you're not going to find out for several months. So it's important to understand that in most of these big contests, the payout structure is pretty steep. So it's going to be hard to be profitable. So I would just recommend, sitting down, if you are going to be playing, more than just a couple drafts, sitting down beforehand, picking a set amount of money that you're willing to put in and basically willing to lose, and then, determining from there what contests you're going to play. Because it's easy to get sucked in and just start firing on drafts, and all of a sudden you put way more money in than you should have.
Exactly. And so what I do to limit myself personally is every time, especially when the $5 drafts or $7 drafts come around, I put in the amount of money on however many drafts I want to do for that. And I don't deposit any more money in that case, because when you think about it, it's like, oh, it's $5. I'll show up to work a little bit, done, paid for it. Didn't even have to worry about it. Well, $5 can end up turning into 30 pretty fast if you sit down and do 5 quick drafts and don't even think about it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think too, a lot of these sites want to basically, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, basically drive a response. Like they don't put out a contest schedule for the summer. So you don't know when the next one's dropping. And then when it does drop, you've got FOMO, you're trying to get as many drafts in as you can before it fills. So that's why, like me personally, I sit down back in March and this is my amount for the summer that I'm going to put in these best ball drafts. I can adjust, which contests I play based on that, but I'm not going to deviate from that set amount.
No, absolutely. So I think I'll just kind of recap what we said here. Keep it simple. Make sure if it's half PPR versus full PPR, whether it's full season total points or if there's playoffs, because that also is involved in the strategy. If you do total points, you don't need to worry about your playoff stacks as pretty much at all in my eyes. What the contest structure is, whether it's 1 in 18 versus 4 in 12 advance, that kind of stuff. So just make sure you're reading the rules, set your money wisely on how you want to spend it, and ultimately have fun with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that was a great recap. Make sure to leave a like here on the videos, subscribe to the channel. We're going to be doing more of these tip videos every Monday, but let us know what you think down in the comments. Thanks for watching another edition of The Climb.